A few weeks ago, I made a video ranking the Hashira in the anime, which people did not like because they thought I was talking about the manga. Well, here's Infinity Castle Hashira. To be clear, this will include all Hashira, but with their feats from Infinity Castle taken into account. So without further ado, let's go. The former Hashira tier includes Urokodaki, Jigoro, Shinobu, Kanae, Shinjuro, and Tengen. To become a Hashira, a demon slayer has to slay 50 demons while training under a current Hashira, or defeat any of the 12 Kizuki. The water Hashira, Urokodaki has been retired and now trains demon slayers. But there's a statement made that if Tanjiro were to use purely water breathing, he could never reach Tomioka's level. If you stretch this to include Urokodaki, as he's a master of water breathing, it could scale him to Kyogai, a former lower Kizuki, and Tanjiro's feats against Enmu's weaker form, the lower one who was amped by Muzan. However, scaling to Kyogai is just not as good as scaling to Rui, as there is a direct strength disparity considering Tanjiro beat Kyogai while weakened, and Rui was much stronger than Tanjiro. The insect Hashira, Shinobu, is one of my favorite Hashira, and sadly met her end against Doma. As much as I like her, her poisons wouldn't have anywhere near the same effectiveness against anyone else as compared to demons. And there's a comparison she makes between herself and her sister, implying she never physically matched her, meaning she has good speed, but absolutely no AP or abilities when it comes to human opponents. Her weakening Doma was due to her sacrificing herself, making that at best a draw as far as feats go. And even then, Inosuke and her little sister could barely win, so in a vacuum, Doma would have just been fine. Not to mention, she implies that she can't decapitate like a random spider family demon who aren't even 12 Kizuki level. The flower Hashira, Kanae is above Shinobu for the reasons we went over. However, some people might think she should be higher, and I don't think she should. She's slower than Shinobu, has no strength feats since outscaling Shinobu is bad, and her abilities might outscale Sayuri, but her only showing was against Doma while nerfed from Shinobu. If we wanted to compare her to Inosuke, his last battle was against Daki, and he did worse than the Hashira did against Muzan, meaning Kanae isn't that strong. However, we'll assume she's at least on par with the lower moons we've seen in the story due to the Hashira requirements. The Flame Hashira, Shinjuro was called back in to help defend the new master and so might be more comparable to Tengen, but that's just because he's one of 3 retired Hashira at the time. His actual scaling comes from Rengoku Gaiden, a canon spin-off manga where we know he could embarrass and body a demon who became the lower 2 Hyro. When he comes for revenge against Rengoku, he thinks him struggling against him is odd and questions if he's the same person, meaning Shinjuro would outscale that Rengoku, who defeats Hyro and becomes a Hashira. To back this up, he's considered a veteran Hashira, which is impressive when considering how young all the current Hashira are. However, Rengoku trained since then, as all the Demon Slayers do, so this doesn't really scale Shinjuro to current Rengoku. The Thunder Hashira, Jigoro never did anything in the series really, but there's one implication we can use to scale him. Zenitsu and Kaigaku were considered improper successors since they couldn't learn all the forms properly, which they eventually compensate for with demonic arts in 7th form, meaning that the 2 of them at their strongest might have reached or surpassed Jigoro. If you use this, it would mean Jigoro is vaguely below upper 6 level, but we know Kaigaku was only considered to be a placeholder, somewhat reinforced by Shamisen Girl being upper 4 and Kaigaku 6, with no upper 5, likely making him and Jigoro weaker than the likes of Gyokai and Gyutaro outright, which makes sense considering Zenitsu's last fight before this was struggling against Daki. The Sound Hashira, Tengen has since retired and recovered after losing his arm, training the Demon Slayers for Infinity Castle. While he had a pitched battle with Gyutaro, Muzan disagrees and thinks Gyutaro could have won without Daki holding him back, and Tengen was helped out by Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and his wives. Still, this is a significantly better feat than any lower moon, and he has sound breathing to avoid being caught off guard, as well as resistance to poisons. We don't know how much weaker he is now, so I think he can still scale to those feats, but losing against upper 6 doesn't mean much compared to what everyone else went on to do. The current Hashira tier includes Rengoku, Mitsuri, Muichiro, and Obanai. These Hashira scale to the upper moons we see in the anime, more than they do the lower Kizuki. The Love Hashira Mitsuri was able to outperform Tanjiro against Zohakuten, and awakened the Demon Slayer mark, likely granting her a 100 times strength and speed amp. Unfortunately, even with this mark, she couldn't win against Hantengu or Nakume, and performed the worst out of the Hashira against Muzan. Still, the disparity in strength between upper moons can be gargantuan, demonstrated by base Kokushibo bodying a stronger Muichiro than the one who defeated Yoko while nerfed, meaning these showings are still better than Tengen. The Serpent Hashira Obanai has an even stronger form of Mitsuri's flexible sword, bending his sword at will around to make it unpredictable and hard to block. He outperformed Mitsuri against Muzan, but couldn't defeat Nakame even with her help. He might have awakened a bright red Nichiren sword, but this mostly helps negate demonic regeneration, which these characters don't have anyways. Another thing backing up his and Mitsuri being above Tengen is his nonchalant reaction to Tengen defeating Gyutaro with Tanjiro's help. Editor Neat here. I'm going to mention this now with Obanai. The transparent world doesn't give us a quantifiable speed increase, it just seems to make the character vaguely faster and give them better reactions, as well as being able to see through an enemy to see their weaknesses. Things like broken bones, snapped muscles, they can exploit that better. But for the sake of this video, it doesn't mean anything, as even with it, Muichiro could not really do as well as everyone else against Kokushibo, so it doesn't seem to give a character a tier jump or anything like that. The Flame Hashira, Rengoku is once again being given the most generous scaling possible. I'm admitting that off the bat. But he could fight Akaza relatively, ultimately losing the Battle of Stamina and then being killed. We learned in Infinity Castle that even then Akaza respected Rengoku's abilities, meaning this wasn't some infinitesimal fraction of Akaza's abilities. While his stamina is downright terrible compared to most of the other characters, he should be strong enough with a 9th form Rengoku when healthy to overpower Mitsuri or Obanai. But I could see the argument of their abilities giving them the defensive edge to outlast him. The Mist Hashira Muichiro is a descendant of Yorichi and the only Hashira to kill an Upper Moon one-on-one. Considered a prodigy by the likes of Gyomei and Tengen, he unfortunately got absolutely sand-devastated by Kokushibo, and only managed to land his bright red attack thanks to a combination of Gyomei, Sanemi, and Kokushibo amped Genya. However, to his credit, when he fought Yoko, he did have to protect the swordsmiths and was poisoned when he won, meaning he's likely much stronger than the likes of someone like Tengen, strengthened by him comparing his lack of talent to him. Also, he is one of the few people with an actual ability, as his final mist form misdirects his opponent's sight and lets him attack them off guard. The Water Hashira, Giyu was considered to be stronger than Tanjiro at the start of Infinity Castle, and was a sparring partner with Sanemi. He then awakened his Demon Slayer mark in the fight against Akaza, and managed to help Tanjiro push Akaza to new heights, which Kokushibo considered a state that Akaza might use to challenge him. He then went on to do better than most against Muzan, and was still standing in time to help restrain Demon King Tanjiro, the strongest demon in history. I do think he stands in the ring with the two strongest Hashira, but his combat style compares worse to theirs and his showings aren't as good. But Akaza being someone that might challenge Kokushibo does reinforce his relativity to them. The Wind Hashira Sanemi fought on par with Tanjiro barehanded and sparred evenly with Giyu in Hashira training. Then when it was time to fight Kokushibo and Muzan, he awakened a birthmark and performed very similarly to Gyomei, noted as one of the stronger ones around by Muzan and outperforming Muichiro against Upper 1. His ability to swing air pressure gives him a range advantage and his blood is toxic to demons, but he scales comparatively to Gyomei, not above him. The Stone Hashira Gyomei is considered by Tanjiro, Inosuke, and the Master to be the strongest Hashira, performs the best of anyone against both Kokushibo and Muzan, and has full control over his birthmark. His glove and mace chain allow him to fight at mid and close range, and his body's physical power is insane, able to overwhelm demons before learning breathing techniques. He also managed to destroy Muzan's head before everyone was dragged into Infinity Castle, which it's hard to say anyone else could pull off. So that's Infinity Castle Hashira. It's a little bit different from anime because everyone actually gets feats, but if you still disagree, tell me why in the comments below. Probably going to be Rengoku. I'm trying to hype Rengoku a bit too much, but yeah, if you have your own video on the topic, let me know so I can react to it on stream. Bye.